Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Apologies, I was a few minutes late on you. Busy doing lots of videos lately. Yeah, I can see that we're live. Again, thank you so much for waiting for me and for joining me again. Sorry, I was a bit late. But it was for good reasons, for more content for you, really. I hope everyone is doing well. Greetings to all of you, to all of my regular live streamers and the new ones as well. And welcome to another live stream. If you're new, this live stream is primarily for my viewers and subscribers to chat to you and to give you a bit of a platform to talk as well. I can see we have a community here with many lovely people. And obviously to speak about more subjects and open the space up for you to share your thoughts, obviously, questions if you have, and for me to elaborate further. I can see I'm getting comments about the kufiyas. Yeah, trying to diversify lately. That's Molly. Thank you. So, and welcome to everyone. Thank you, everyone who is greeting. So, I posted a video earlier on. If you haven't watched it, I sent it here to the live stream tab about the Russian situation in the Golan Heights. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it after this live stream. It's very interesting about further presence in the Golan Heights. They're establishing themselves very, very well. And they're de facto controlling it from the Syrian side, really. You have the Syrian government under Russian control. They're preparing for something big, and they also had a security meeting internally. They sent a warning to all Russian residents not to travel to the Middle East altogether, but particularly not Israel, not Lebanon, and not Gaza and the West Bank. I'm going to have another video later this evening, potentially 2 videos, about further evidence, very harsh, strong evidence regarding the Israeli complicity on the 7th of October and the massacres. Unprecedented, by the way, with this video from Israeli pilots admitting many things that they didn't admit before, and another video about restarting the war. Very important statements about restarting. Not that it stopped, really. I mean, they withdrew their forces, right? Their fighting force. They kept the Nahal Brigade. Now, yesterday, after they withdrew, they killed Ismail Haniya's sons and grandchildren. Apparently, they were on their way to conduct a military operation with their grandchildren. Firstly, they're not members of the armed wing of Hamas. That's number one. Secondly, they were going with their children to greet their relatives for Eid, celebrate. It's like saying everyone in the Netanyahu family should be assassinated because they're linked to Netanyahu. But that's Israel for you. They killed 60 of his family members and many other, as some sort of an accomplishment. Now they had special operations in Gaza today. They killed 63 people in the last 24 hours. Massacres, again, massacring people after people, one after the other. And they talk about targeted assassinations, then you have children dying in UNRWA refugee camps. It's like, I mean, what are you establishing your evidence on, your information? What kind of information you're getting? You're not just revealing yourself as a genocidal, satanic death cult, but also as an incompetent state militarily and from an intelligence perspective. If you're coming to tell me this operation was based on verified information from the Shabak and Special Operation and Intel, and then you end up killing children, what does that mean? That you're incompetent. That's what it means. You're there to kill people. I see some of you started asking questions. Feel free to ask as many questions as you like. I'm with you here. And I'll obviously start addressing all of the questions after what I want to talk to you about. And what I want to talk to you about is in this video is an article in one of the leading top really and most and oldest Israeli newspaper, Yediot Ahronot, their website. They had an article written by a man called Ofer Shelah. He is a researcher, senior researcher actually, in the Institute for National Security Studies in Israel. He had an article in Ynet saying that Biden offers us an opportunity that may be the last. Meanwhile, he's still polite. This is a senior researcher, Institute of National Security in Israel. That's his job, to research security in Israel. He started the article by saying the latest statement by US President Joe Biden, according to which Benjamin Netanyahu is making a mistake in the way he is leading Israel in the war, is another in a chain of statements that have become so commonplace that we forgot how unprecedented they are. And let me just stop here for a second. I've been talking a lot about many unprecedented things when it comes to Israel, including their approach with the United States, the level of disregard to US advice, to US ideas, thoughts. Because at the end of the day, you're relying on them. You're nothing without them. Israel is nothing without the US. That's why we said from the beginning, the US is worse than Israel when it comes to this, because they're the enabler. And I always like to give an example of a psychopathic lunatic imprisoned, and then you have the warden giving him the keys to go out, handing him keys to an ammunition room, telling him, go take as many weapons as you like and go to the next mall where you'll find lots of innocent people and have fun. A psychopath with convictions, history of massacres. This is the situation. Bonsdad, thank you so much for your super thanks. I really appreciate it. He added, from the president and his deputy, through the senior cabinet members, and to Chuck Schumer, perhaps the most senior Jewish politician in the US today, and to conservative columnists such as Bret Stephens from the New York Times, the criticism of Netanyahu and his policies is wall to wall in the US. It was not like this in the most difficult days of the disagreements between Jerusalem and Washington. The obvious reason is that Americans see what most Israelis also see, including a significant portion of Likud voters in the last elections. According to public opinion polls, the Prime Minister of Israel is at odds with the country he heads. Netanyahu's political and personal survival depends on the continued existence of the coalition, something that depends on him continuing the war vector as it is, without changes that could lead to the withdrawal of this or that part of the coalition and the increasing demand for elections. At the same time, the need for such a change becomes critical day by day. The return of the abducted, the creation of an alternative to Hamas that would prevent it from returning and creating a security threat from the Strip, the possibility of a settlement in the north under which 80,000 displaced persons could return to their homes, the creation of a Middle Eastern coalition with the support of the US that would be a powerful counterweight to the Iranian axis of resistance. Despite my comments on the word axis, right? They're trying to make it as if they're axis of evil or something. So I call them the allies of resistance. But hey, you can use the word axis. All of these are not or will not happen without substantial and immediate change during the course of the war. Netanyahu does not want to do this, not because he does not understand the situation, but because his highest interest is survival. This is the essence of a conflict of interest. But not only Netanyahu has a watch on what he holds to stop them, Biden and Mohammed bin Salman also have one. And of course, also the abductees, except that for them, it's an hourglass whose grains run out quickly. The American president is almost half a year away from the elections, lagging behind in the polls and suffering politically because of his unreserved support for Israel since October the 7th. The Saudi crown prince, a full partner in Biden's vision of the new Middle Eastern architecture, operates on the assumption that if Donald Trump is elected in November, the vision will be put to an end because no Democratic senator will support a defense alliance with Saudi Arabia brought about by the bitter rival. The Iranians and their allies also have a clock, but it turns slowly and calmly. Every day that passes brings them closer to the vision of an isolated Israel, mired in the mud of Gaza and based in the war of attrition in the north, ostracized from the liberal democratic world whose economy and culture are fed by it, divided from within, and weakening every day. At the beginning of the war, the Americans spoke well to us in a way that had no precedent. During the Yom Kippur War, 1973, when the IDF's material situation was much more difficult, it took 8 days for the air train of aid from America to start. This time, it took less than 2 days. So the American president did not think of telling Israel's enemies, don't. He sent 2 navies in a direct threat to anyone who tries to expand the arena of war. The desperation of Bibi and his government is not limited to the Emirates. Last week, in the face of Iran's threat for the revenge of the assassination in Damascus, the Americans only leaked to the Iranian reaction script to the media and did not add any don't do it. In practice, the great friend is no longer willing to get involved in the name of Netanyahu's complete victory. And it's interesting to note here, when we were speaking the other day in the live stream, I mentioned one very important bit, is that all it takes for the US is to lift the aid of Israel in terms of its support when it comes to Iran, which is something very important. Or tell Iran, do whatever the hell you want to do, and we won't support Israel. And now you have a senior researcher in the Israeli National Security Research Center saying that. He continued, this is a worrying development like no other, not only because the opportunity to really change the face of the Middle East, to get out of the strategic paralysis imposed on us by the axis of resistance and inflict a defeat on it is fading away, but because there is a real danger that the US will return to the harmful policies of the Obama and Trump days, a gradual disengagement from this hopeless situation, from this hopeless region. Speaking highly not only of absolute victory, but also of Israel defending itself on its own and finding alternative supports for America in the world. It is worthwhile to carefully study the events of the current war, the policies of China and Russia, and public opinion in most Western countries. He ended it up by saying, Biden is not only a friend of Israel of the good old kind, but also perhaps the last president to take the place of the United States in the world in terms of global responsibility. The opportunity he offers us is perhaps the last and is particularly great, a fundamental regional change which will put us in a much stronger position in the face of a great enemy, Iran, and the axis that it built. In the face of this opportunity, and the way the Prime Minister refuses to take it, to say that he is making a mistake is still American etiquette. Again, Ofer Shelah is a senior researcher at the Institute for National Security Studies in Israel, clearly highlighting again the completely unreasonable approach that Benjamin Netanyahu has when it comes to the US, his narcissistic, psychopathic approach to the war, his disregard to the US, the biggest ally of Israel and its main supporter. And this offer has been on the table from a few months now. They said to Israel, peace, give them this. You'll have a deal with Saudi Arabia. You'll have a joint agreement. You'll have this and that. But clearly, Benjamin Netanyahu is sticking to his right-wing maniacs and deciding to continue the war. And now we'll open the space up for all of you for your questions and contributions. And I will do my best to address all of them. Faisal Kawuya, thank you so much for your super thanks. You said Israel is a threat to the whole humanity. Absolutely. Bunzdad, thank you so much again for your super thanks. I really appreciate your support. It means a lot to me, and it contributes to this work that I'm making here for you, and it helps me produce more and increase, obviously, the reach with your support. And obviously, many of you are people who are activists in their own way, which is something great, really. Let me go up to see the questions from the beginning. And obviously, greetings to everyone joining us now as well. Welcome to the live stream, and feel free to participate with us this evening. Sheikh Amma, first question. Hi, guys. Why not stand with Israel? Hey, stand with whoever you want. I think there's more than one reason not to stand with Israel. Okay. Fight Back saying, just saw your video about the Golan Heights, is very good news. Yeah, and if you haven't watched it, go and watch it after the live stream, and I'm going to have another 1 or 2 videos coming out later this evening, very important, to do with the Russian actions and with the restart of the war, official statements that are coming. P. Atlantis, I got unsubscribed to the channel. I just had to resubscribe. Also, it's not allowing me to notify when you come in. I heard this from many of my subscribers, and I also raised this with YouTube. The response from YouTube is that they have a technical glitch that they're working on. So good luck to YouTube in addressing their technical glitch, or glitches. But what I would advise is, obviously, always check your subscription, tell YouTube, and also make sure your notification is on. And again, if you have any problems, report them to YouTube. But I've had this comment from very many of my subscribers. And obviously, if it's a technical glitch from YouTube, I hope that it gets sorted very quickly. ABCD, the British SAS got beaten in Russia and captured trying to assault Kherson covertly. Look, all of this is just proof that this is a proxy war against Russia, and people need to remember that the aim is not Ukraine or the Ukrainian people. This is not for the benefit of the Ukrainian people or for the European people or for peace or for stability or for social or international cohesion. The whole reason is US hegemony and their greed and them wanting to control Russia. Russia is a big superpower. They're a threat. They're very rich, lots of gas, lots of production. and they don't want competitors. Clearly, they have the same vision that they've had since World War II. US hegemony, one global power, the police of the world. Not many people in the US agree to this. However, clearly, it's still the US foreign policy. That's the thing. If it won't change by will, it will change by force. So Ukraine brought this to the headlights, and that's why they shut down everything to do with Russia, because they didn't want to let you hear the Russian side of the story. They didn't want you to know how much damage they're causing to their own population in the US, in Europe, when it comes to the hiking of prices, the hiking of gas prices, energy bills. Everyone's paying double, triple, or quadruple in energy bills. Why is that? It's because of their stance against Russia. And they had no plan B, just for their own greed. Yet, instead of supporting their own citizens, making up for their own misdeeds, they're making them pay more by taking more tax money and sending more billions to this proxy war that clearly Zelensky is not winning in. Jacinta Houston, you said about the assassination of the Hamas leader's sons. Why would his 3 sons all travel in one car? Doesn't make sense, especially if their dad is at highest risk. Well, you need to remember that they're mature adults and they made their own decision to stay in Gaza. When you have a representative in a political movement that is working from abroad, he has an opportunity to take his family with him. They had an opportunity to leave Gaza. They didn't want to. They said, we want to stay here with our people. This is where we're born. This is where we were raised. If we suffer from something, it's from something that the population suffers from. Similar sentiments, similar tones came from Ismail Haniyeh himself. And they obviously decided to do that. And again, Israel's doing these things to try and achieve an image of victory that they cannot and will not obtain militarily against the Palestinian resistance, because they haven't achieved it during 6 months of genocide with the full support of the world's biggest superpower, with the most supposedly advanced weapons. They've been selling themselves as the most advanced army in the Middle East, yet they're being shredded, they're being defeated in Gaza by a group of people wearing flip-flops fighting them, really. So they think that they can achieve an image. And you need to understand many of these actions, by the way, they're mainly really for domestic public opinion. Oh, we killed his sons, right? It reminds me of the instance where they found Yahya Sinwar's shoe. What, did you check the DNA on the shoe to say it was a Sinwar? Oh, we attacked his office. Boo-hoo. And what are you achieving by that? Do you know what I mean? But it's because they don't have an image of victory. They resort to these cowardice acts, really, that just show their true identity and reveal them for what they are. That's why they're soldiers. They brag about, their TikTok videos. You've seen them probably more than me, finding women's underwear, stealing from people, torturing people, going over them, their bodies, right? They get a kick out of it. It shows you the mentality of these people. Mahdi, will Iran attack happen these days? Any news? Firstly, thank you for your membership, Mahdi. Well, Iran said they will retaliate. Clearly, they will retaliate. The time and place and level will be at their discretion. There needs to be an element of surprise. Will they attack directly? Most likely not, because so far what's been happening is fully supported by Iran. But Iran doesn't want the judicial, the political, the military, the diplomatic implications that it would have if it were to engage in this war directly. You've had statements saying that the attack will come through the resistance hands. We will retaliate. Khamenei, the supreme leader, said recently, the attack on the consulate is like an attack on our land and we will retaliate. Where, when, how? Not sure. Another thing that we got from Iran is they won't attack in a manner that will divert the attention from the genocide in Gaza. So they don't want people to think, oh, and look, now Iran are the aggressors or what have you. Although, I mean, who would have sympathy for Israel, right? They've been committing a genocide against civilians. One of the most cruel crimes against humanity we've ever witnessed, really. So that it will be very specific and intense. Could be obviously foreign embassy, could be a person, strategic locations by the resistance, coordinated attacks. And they also, don't forget, threatened the US. Because they said the US bears responsibility. The US started saying, oh, we're not in charge of what Israel does and this. But Iran, they know the game. It's like they're your little puppet. You support them militarily. You know, if you wanted to stop this genocide from the beginning, you could have stopped it. You didn't. That's why they attacked so many bases in Iraq and in the Middle East. Sophie Cool is saying, keep up with your podcast. I really enjoy the latest, the latest situation. Eid Mubarak to you, brother, and you. And yeah, thank you. I will do my best to obviously continue with, bringing good people, interesting people. And yeah, hopefully we will have some more videos, more podcasts. Bonzad, if Venezuela took the Palestinians in exchange for 20 years, no sanctions, would this be a good solution? The hate is normalized. Now Venezuela could use their resourcefulness. This would only serve Israel. Why? Because historically and contemporarily, whenever a Palestinian leaves, they're not allowed to go back. As in Palestinians without... Palestinians from Gaza, West Bank, or Palestinians who were expelled during the ethnic cleansing campaign in 1948 and the second mass ethnic cleansing campaign in 1967. They're just on the borders, the refugees. So if they're not allowing they're not allowing Palestinian citizens of Israel inside of Israel and going back to their lands a couple of miles away from their home. So how will they allow people back if they're in Venezuela? That would be a completion of the ethnic cleansing campaign and would only serve Israel, because international guarantees, international law, all of these things, they never mattered to Israel. Like you have UN resolutions calling for the return of the refugees. You have UN resolutions calling for having a Palestinian state. You have UN resolutions calling Israel to stop the settlements in the West Bank. You've had US resolutions, so many UN resolutions. Israel doesn't care about them. Hell, you've had the world's most important court, the International Court for Justice, telling Israel, stop committing genocide. That's telling them you are, number one, committing genocide. Number two, stop it. What does Israel do? Kill a further 7,000. But say We're not committing genocide. That's the only difference that the ICJ made in terms of Israel's genocide. Internationally, countries dealing with Israel, banning arms exports, all of that is different, did have effect there, but in terms of the genocide, didn't stop them. The only difference it made is Israel started to say, we're not breaching international law. So they're telling the ICJ, look, you told us we're not, and we haven't, actually. This is Israel's argument. We haven't committed genocide. So they don't care about international, they don't care about international guarantees for the Palestinian people. And they proved throughout their history that they understand the language of force when it comes to these things. Although 7th of October didn't have to happen. We could have not had this situation only if it were down to equality. If the Palestinian people had equal rights from the Jordan River to the sea, why would anyone fight? You have equal rights. You can go, you can come, you can this, you can participate, everything. But they won't care, and that would obviously ultimately serve the Zionist agenda. Wildlife matters. Hi, Mahmoud. Israel said they would retaliate if Iran if they attack their territory. Would it be possible for Iran to target IOF forces in Gaza? So yeah, Israel said they would retaliate, and they also said, the foreign minister said today, that if Iran would carry out an attack from within Iran, we will have an attack inside of Iran. They're preparing with Cyprus now. They're having drills with Cyprus for long distance attacks against Iran. They've done them previously as well. But when it comes to Iran attacking IOF forces in Gaza, that wouldn't be very relevant for them, at least in my opinion, because you already have a resistance there. They're actively fighting, and they know what's happening on the ground. They're more effective. They're more knowledgeable. They have more experience. The attack could potentially be a coordinated mission between the resistance movements that Iran supports. If it were to be an Iranian-backed move, not an Iranian-backed move, but directly done by Iran, it would be on a foreign location outside of Israel, in my opinion, unless Iran just says, what the hell, I'm going to launch my missiles on Israel. But then you're kind of declaring war as a state. Gaza saying Spanish politician Lone Belara says Israel is competing with Nazism and horror of humanity. Yeah, they've surpassed them now. The ghettos were more merciful than Gaza. Now, if you look at images from Nazi Germany and look at the images of Gaza, not to undermine any genocide. The Nazi Germany and its genocide, not only against Jewish people, though, but you need to remember, like, tens of millions died. Most of them were Christian. Let's not forget that. But what they did against the Jewish people is awful as well. And let's not forget that the Zionist movement collaborated with Zionism. Read about the Ha'avara agreement, where Zionist movement had dealings with the Nazi government to bring more Jewish people to Israel. And think about it for a second. Europe had a problem. It said it had a problem. It said it had a problem with Jewish people. And the talk was about finding the final answer for the Jewish question, final solution. Zionism got them the final solution. They told every Jew across the world, come here. So to them, to this Nazi ideology, this racist ideology, supremacist ideology, they completed their mission. Through what? Through Israel. Okay, let's go. Daniela, thank you so much for your super. And thank you for everyone else commenting and with your kind comments as well. Ari Magoo, Salam Mahmoud, regarding your earlier video, will Russia take a strong pro-Syrian stance and anti-Israel one, or more like a moderator? Look, Russian foreign policy is generally non-interventionist, but they know what the US is up to. You can't be like non-interventionist and rely on the goodwill of a genocidal empire. Right, let's not forget that the US committed far larger genocides than Israel. So Russia, to Israel, Russia is now pro-Hamas. If you want to read what Israel's saying, Russia's pro-Hamas. You had one Likud party member, which is the party of Benjamin Netanyahu. He came out 2 months after the 7th of October, just December. He said that he sent a threat to Russia saying, after we finish from Hamas, we're coming for you. Imagine the arrogance. We're coming for you. Israel's coming for Russia. We won't forget what you've done. They're delusional. So Russia is clearly taking a better stance than other countries when it comes to the genocide, and they will definitely be more supportive of Syria if an attack happens on Syria. Bear in mind, there's an understanding in Syria. There's a big understanding in Syria. Benjamin Netanyahu, between 2010 to 2020, he was constantly back and forth to Russia. He and many of the senior government members to coordinate what they're going to do in Syria, because they know Russia's there. They don't want to step on their toes, and they still want freedom against Iran. However, Israel did many things against Russia. One of the most important things is when they took one of their jets against their agreement they had with Russia and took their air force into Syrian airspace when a Russian airplane was holding military personnel and deliberately flew next to it to activate the Syrian air defense systems and maneuver far away because they had a faster jet, so that the Syrian air defense systems targets the Russian plane that was holding, and they killed all of them, over 18 Russian military personnel. And Russia at the time sent serious warnings to Israel. They knew what they were up to. So when it comes to Syria, Russia's on the side of Syria. It's not on the side of Israel. They sent very many warnings to Israel. Israel's not comfortable with their position, but they know that Russia is a superpower. They know that their capabilities. Russia controls a port in Syria. They have air defenses in Syria that they control. Now the Golan Heights, they're controlling the Syrian army. So, and they're allowing Iran to operate. And you understand? So if so many weapons are sent to Hezbollah, for example, through Syria, who is Russia supporting? John Roger. Sorry, before John Roger, Jack Ayub. What would Israeli public do, Brother Mahmoud, if Hamas takes the position of assassinating hostages and saying it's all Bibi Netanyahu's fault? The resistance, Abu Ubaidah particularly, he made that threat before, but they didn't implement it. They tried to put pressure on Israel, but they realized that Israel is careless about their. And I think they just made it as a threat, Hamas. They didn't really mean to do it. Because if you listen to the feedback from the Israeli prisoners who were held by Hamas and the Palestinian resistance, they only speak positive things about their time when they were held by them, how they were treated well, nicely, with honor, with respect. But it's Israel that's killing its prisoners in Gaza. Over 80 so far. We've been reporting about them from day one. They killed 50 in the first month. The people who survived the 7th of October or were released, they said that wherever we were targeted by Israeli forces. They knew that. Hannibal directive. They want to get rid of them. But then when Hamas understood the policy and stated that very clearly, they told Israel, they sent them a very simple message, although they still hold many top-level military prisoners, right? Hidden in very safe places. They told them, if you kill all of your prisoners and you think that you would reduce the price of our requests, we will ask for everything we're asking for, even if we had one of your civilians or prisoners remaining in Gaza. Clear. Which leads me to Roger. World powers tout the two-state solution, but how would imposing this solve the conflict when neither side seems to want to partition Palestine now, and the Palestinians have a legal right to return? Interesting question. It's because the global superpowers, especially the ones who support Israel massively, they're imperial powers. Divide and rule. It was the British Empire that divided Palestine, divided all of the Arab states. They divided India and Pakistan and left Kashmir for them both to fight, so that the populations and countries can't have unity and cohesion and pose what they call a threat, because they don't view the world as an international human community. They see the world from an arrogant supremacist approach. It's we and them, and they're subject to us, and we are entitled to everything. And we are the worldly class people, and we're entitled. This is the approach. And the two-state solution is yet another example of this approach. So, okay, you have a two-state solution. What are you going to do with the Palestinian refugees? Okay, the Palestinian refugees, they were forced out from what is now Israel. Historical Palestine, occupied Palestine. What are you going to do to refugees who were expelled from Haifa, Yafa, Ramle, all of these? Are you going to tell them, go to the West Bank? I wasn't born there. I want to go back to my land. Right? But they wouldn't want to do it. Why? Because they'll tell you about the demographic threat. Because they want the Jews to be the demographic that's a majority, and they don't want any. It's an unimplementable solution. It's a solution that's been dead ever since it was brought to light, really. And the 30 years of negotiation between the Palestinian Authority and Israel just prove how much of a facade all of that is. The only solution in Israel and in Palestine is a one-state solution with equal rights for Palestinians and Israelis. That wouldn't stop racism all of a sudden. It's not like everything's going to be happy-clappy the next day. No. Is everything happy-clappy in South Africa? No. Some people still believe in apartheid. But if they don't like it, you can't handle it, go live somewhere else. Simple. You would prove that you're already proving that you're not for equality. Hell, they don't believe in objectiveness. Yair Lapid, the Israeli opposition leader who served 20 years as a journalist, he said in the beginning of this war that the media cannot be objective. Being objective means supporting the Hamas. So what? If I see the truth, does that mean I support the Hamas? Is that what you're saying? Which case, that's a serious statement, that if people hear the truth, they will sympathize with these people. So that's the only solution. That's the only solution that we're promoting. Many people are. That's the solution. By the way, because they like to distort history as well. That's the solutions that the Palestinians wanted in 1948, and that's why they rejected the two-state solution. Because they wanted the one democratic state with everyone, because Jews and Christians and Muslims have been living in Palestine for centuries. And to them, they didn't want to split their state, obviously in a very unfair manner. But why? We've been living here just because these European colonialists came with their own violent ideology imposing their will on us? No. But the Israelis will argue that, oh, we gave you an opportunity in 1948 after we committed ethnic cleansing and mass genocide and killed thousands and mass rapes and mass murders, and there was no social media, there was no other side. It was the powerful writing the history. Thankfully now everyone is reading into this history. Blank Stairs, thank you so much for your super thanks, you and everyone. You said, hello, Mahmoud, thank you for all your work. Greeting everyone, praise for Palestine forever. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate your support. Think before you type. If you repeat a lie often enough, eventually it becomes Israel. Absolutely. They surpassed the definition of pathological liars, by the way. Do you know that? The medical term pathological liar is someone who lies consistently 5 times a day for 6 months. How many years have they been lying for? Way more than 5 times a day. A century. Hyper-pathological liars. Terry Lynn Nelson. Mahmoud, has there been any information about what happened with the meeting in Russia and the decision to establish a technocrat government? Palestine needs a strong, unified voice. Yes, and we spoke about it at the time, and I will repeat. Russia obviously tried to make something good, unite the Palestinians, because they told them not to impose our will, unlike, the US and the UK and EU countries imposing their will, saying they shouldn't rule. But they told them, we're just giving you advice. And we think if you guys unite, it'll be a stronger position for a state and what have you. But we've had revelations from these meetings, and these revelations came from one guy who's neither Hamas nor Fatah, by the way, who is from the PFLP, a leftist socialist movement that participates in the resistance, by the way, and that believes in one secular state in Palestine. His name is Maher al-Tahir, and he said that, unfortunately, the Palestinian Authority, led by Mahmoud Abbas's side, they weren't willing to show more leniency and openness when it comes to having a united front. And he said it's very disheartening, especially as it's coming in one of the most crucial points in Palestinian history. So you clearly know who's preventing this unity. It's the Palestinian Authority led by Mahmoud Abbas. And they've always been an obstacle. After the democratic elections, after the reconciliation attempts, because they are controlled by Israel. I mean, the Palestinian president himself, Mahmoud Abbas, once famously stated, and that was reported by an Arab leader, by the way, that invited him to a conference during a war where the people were suffering. And he told him, I count to 10. They won't let me. And if I do, they'll shoot me. What kind of president is that? Is that a president or a puppet? Just shows you why and how things are done and why there's so much against the Hamas. Because this is the only democratic place in the Middle East. Joy Chen, very confused why it says buy your own super chat, how to just donate. Any donations, if you want to support my work, if you want to support me and my work here on YouTube, on social media, you can do that via my website or obviously through supers. I hope that elaborates. And you'll find links obviously on my channel description, by the way, for anyone who is interested in supporting or becoming a patron. I'd really appreciate it. And your contributions are very, very important in me delivering this content. Mel Gon, Mahmoud, I heard someone that Zelensky has bought a property somewhere in England recently. I wouldn't be surprised. He's filthy rich, Zelensky, warlord. And he's supporting Israel. He's complaining that Russia is occupying Ukraine and they're waging a war, and he's supporting Israel. And comparing Russia to Hamas. This guy's a millionaire. You know, one of the most corrupt governments in Europe, Ukraine. You know, even with this aid that they steal from your pockets and send it to Zelensky, this corrupt puppet, they go and resell some of the weapons that they receive from the NATO to third countries. Do you know that? Obviously, they won't splash it on mainstream media. This is what they do. Very corrupt. Samba boy, do you know if there are more convoys coming into the northern part of Gaza in the last couple of days? Well, Israel said after they got this telling off from Biden, Netanyahu, that they're going to open the Erez crossing, which is an Israeli crossing in the most northern part of Gaza, that Israel was closing ever since the 7th of October, claiming that Hamas destroyed, which is a pathetic excuse because they can simply open it. I mean, they bulldozed all of Gaza. Can't you open it with one of your bulldozers instead of killing people and running over their bodies? They said that, but now they're backtracking. And now Benjamin Netanyahu said, I can't open, although Benjamin Netanyahu promised that to Biden, to world leaders and to his cabinet, to all cabinet members. And now he's saying, I can't because my coalition doesn't want to. It'll break the coalition. Yeah, Ben Gvir and Smotrich. Shows you where this guy stands and what he prioritizes. And how much of a liar he is to everyone. Val Bowen. Good afternoon, Mahmoud. The attack just show the masses how they can be precise in their attacks. Begs to ask, what was the reason for this level of destruction? They just exposed them. Yeah, I mean, they've been exposing themselves ever since the beginning, really, these people. And we know them. We know their ways. But look, in many ways, despite the level of destruction and suffering, what Israel's done in the last 6 months was something that was unachievable, and no one dreamt about it in terms of everyone who was supporting Palestine before, to reach this level of awareness globally. And instead of trying to take political moves to solve it, which is it's politically solvable, they persist on the destruction, and they show themselves, they record themselves committing these atrocities and publishing it to the world. And they're spending billions on hasbara, on Israeli propaganda, instead of implementing a few policies that will solve the solution once and for all. Right? So they have been exposing themselves all along, but now it's like this global exposure. And I think it was like meant to be, because you're not only questioning Israel here, and obviously many people are interested because it opens up multiple subjects, really. You talk about politics, you talk about religion, you talk about history, you talk about your own government. Sorry, but where do you stand? Do I live in a free democratic country that respects human rights? And if so, how can they support a genocide? And let's not forget now the tone is changing slightly, okay? But remember, they're forced to change the tone because of everything. Just go back to the early days, when more people were killed in higher numbers per hour, per minute, butchered, 16,000 in less than 40 days. What was the tone? what were the statements from the same leaders who are now saying, oh no, let the aid in. Don't forget the early days. Fight Back and a couple of others here. Mahmoud have a conversation with Richard Medhurst. He's Syrian. Yeah, I know Richard. I actually contacted him. If he gets back to me, we'll definitely do something. I contacted many others as well. But obviously, you need, if someone responds, then we'll definitely do something. But I did contact many people that I think we can potentially have a good conversation with. Al Qaeda. I think it was a response saying Russia just announced that they are building a nuclear power plant in Burkina Faso. Why didn't the French do that? Because the French are a colonial state, like Britain and the US. They don't want nations to be. You know, they talk about China and Africa and Russia. China isn't enslaving the people of Africa. China took off 50 billion in debt of Chinese states just a few years ago, of African countries, because they look at mutual benefit. They don't look at the world from a superior colonial perspective, unlike the French. And if they don't get their way in all sorts of parts of the world that they occupy, these colonial powers, they resort to violence. And then they talk to you about terrorism. Excuse me, you're the great grandfather of terrorism. Take any terrorism you talk about, times it by 3 million, that's you. And they talk about the people who respond then. Kenneth Hall, will Russia protect Iran? Yes, I think so. Because Russia and China look at it from the bigger picture. They look at it as, oh, they're coming to us now. So if Iran is attacked directly, that's stepping too far against Russia and China. And I think that the US knows this, and Israel. Where is Abu Ubaidah? That's Hina. Where's Abu Ubaidah? Is he dead? We didn't hear any confirmation that he's dead. He hasn't been out for almost a month now. But they have their own reasons for one of their spokespersons going out and making a statement. They send messages to Israel with that, with the appearance itself. He could be, we don't know. But there has been no report that he's neither injured nor dead. Catherine Dawson, did you see Tucker Carlson interviewed the Gazan Lutheran pastor? Thoughts on countering Zionism with appeals to Christianity? I actually haven't seen that. But I think in terms of countering Zionism with appeals to Christianity, I always viewed this as a political feud that takes all sorts of shapes, really, and one of them is the religious shape. That's not to say that the people battling don't have religious motivation. For example, the Palestinian resistance is very clear in its Islamic faith and ideology in everything that they do. Israel claims its fighting for the Jewish people, so to speak. But I think the way to counter Zionism is, number one, reveal it for what it is: a violent neo-colonial supremacist ideology that's against humanity. It's incompatible with humanity. And if you talk about the Jewish people particularly, it's the ideology that's done the most harm for Jewish people. Zionism. What are we talking about? Israel is the least safe place for Jewish people. So number one, you reveal it for what it is, what it has been, what it was, what it is, and then you promote the alternative to that. What is the alternative to that? Universal human rights. Simple. Everyone is equal. Everyone deserves equal opportunities, equal rights. Everyone must have access to water, to food, to medical things that they need. Very simple. So I wouldn't follow the notion or agree with the notion that you need to counter it with like a Christianity appeal or whatever. Although I believe that it's important in terms of the followers of the Christianity, the Christian faith, to understand where this notion came from, that these people are the chosen people of God. It's important. Where's this notion coming from? Why are we saying that these people are the chosen people of God? Who killed Jesus according to Christian belief? Right? So it's more important, in my opinion, to obviously reveal Zionism as it is, and then counter it with the basic things that all humanity shares, really, all the things that humanity shares: strive for justice, peace, equality, liberty, freedom. That's the most important thing. Saying that, it's very important to speak with people, obviously, with different faiths, both Palestinian or in Israel or across the world. But thanks for bringing that to my attention. Sailor Jerry Swallow, thank you for your super feeling. Well, yeah, getting there. Getting there. 3 illnesses in 1 month. And David Yee, thank you for your super. I appreciate it. And chocolate pudding as well. Thank you very much for your super thanks and for your lovely support. Chocolate pudding, can you comment on the internal politics in Lebanon and Jordan? Well, in Jordan, you have the people very angry with the government, putting more pressure for them to stop this shameful support for Israel and this land route. In Lebanon, it's a bit more dangerous. So Lebanon is a country that had sectarian civil wars. There's still a lot of sectarianism in Lebanon, very ugly sectarianism. Now there was an assassination of a person who belongs to the Christian movement, the Lebanese forces, Al-Quwat al-Libnaniya. These forces were in alliance with Israel in the civil war, and they massacred Palestinians at the time, by the way. And they always don't like Hezbollah. They always speak against Hezbollah, against the resistance, against all of these things. And they've always taken a very harsh stance against the Syrian refugees in Lebanon. The official report from the Lebanese army is that the man who was assassinated by a criminal gang. They, typical to them, this movement, they are selling it as a Syrian government assassination against this person, and they're killing them based on their identity, as if the Syrian government, doesn't have Christians or whatever. So you've had people protesting from this movement, firstly calling for all Syrian refugees to flee, to get out, some of them giving them ultimatums. And there were happy, clappy reports in Israel. Israel loves it when there's sectarian violence and, clashes between people in countries that they don't like. They were saying that some of these people, according to Israel, said, Israel, you don't have to worry, we will have a civil war. I wouldn't be surprised if this whole attempt and act was planned and executed by Israel in terms of preparation before a potential war in Lebanon. Because to them, they would relieve some of the pressure off them if they would go on an all-out war against Lebanon and try and take down Hezbollah, if they have more people in Lebanon siding with them. Don't forget, when Israel occupied Lebanon, there was something called the South Lebanon Army. Tzadal in Hebrew. Tzva Drom Lebanon. And that army was directly belonging to the IDF, and it was led by Lebanese. And then when Israel withdrew, they withdrew after the blows of the resistance in Lebanon. These people shamefully were waiting on the borders of Israel. Please, please save us, open the borders for us. Similarly to how some of the Hamas opponents fled to Israel when they tried to attempt a coup against Hamas after the democratic elections, and them not liking the results, they fled to Israel. They fled to some Gulf states as well. And some of them, Israel treats them as if they're nothing. They think that Israel will, they treat them like nothing. And many of them reveal this. So I think it's a very malicious attempt, and that obviously I hope it doesn't escalate to anything dangerous, and the Lebanese people should be aware of these plans. Tam McIntosh, the people of Scotland support the people of Palestine. Thank you. ABCD, I would think the majority of Palestinians living in other countries as refugees would return along with many other people from other different countries who have never been able to visit. I believe that as well. Marvin Vergus, are there any billionaires that are outspoken for the Palestinian cause now and from the past that are still around? Not many. Look, when the Yom Kippur War, when the 1973 war, or Ramadan War, 6th of October, and there was a war between Israel and Syria and Egypt. At the time, the richest Arab country, Saudi Arabia, imposed an oil embargo on the US. And that raised the oil prices sky high in the US. King Faisal at the time. What happened to King Faisal? He was assassinated. Very dodgy assassination. Clearly orchestrated by the US. Now, there is no evidence to show that they directly orchestrated it, but it was very shady. Someone who was close to the royal family somehow passed security with a weapon when he shouldn't have been there in that meeting in the presence of the king. He was allowed to go and he shot him for no reason. After that, they didn't dare take any position as such when it comes to using oil as leverage. Nowadays, you don't see many people with a lot of money supporting, obviously, because they know they would be risking it. What I don't know is that how anyone can live with himself, whether you're a billionaire or if you own nothing. you can't speak about something like a genocide against any human being, injustice at such a massive scale, whether you're Palestinian or not, billionaire or not. So we're a human, global human family. How can people not sympathize with the suffering of their fellow human beings? But obviously people with more money or fame, even like with famous people, you saw people sacrificing many things and being brave enough to go out and speak. And many of them said about the level of pressure that they have. Clearly, there's a network here. There's a network of pressure. And if you've done the wrong thing and they have evidence against you or whatever, that's it. You'll close your mouth for life. Alicia Stephanie, I call my government reps every day, and I am astonished that they will just throw October 7th in my face even after anything I say. Firstly, great work. However, unfortunately, with some of these people, it's like you're speaking to a brick wall. It's as if there's a script that they constantly repeat. Same mantra, 7th of October. The next time I would advise you to say, what exactly on the 7th of October? The massacre of Israeli civilians? Israel carried them out. We've had evidence from Israel. Whether it's the massacre in the Nova Festival, Israel released footage of their helicopters mass shooting revelers at the festival. That's just from one helicopter. And the images of the tanks bombing, the witness statements from Israelis who said that the Israeli civilians were killed from fire from Israeli tanks. Who committed the massacres on the 7th of October? Hamas or Israel? If you see look at all of the Hamas footage that they released on the 7th of October. 95% of the military boss. They weren't out there to commit a massacre. If they did, we would have seen the different numbers here. But that's typical, really, politicians. Don't forget that they might be bought politicians like AIPAC, the reproduce of AIPAC. Catherine Dawson, thoughts on Nicaragua's case against Germany? How important are German arms is not real? How does it affect the USA? It's very important. It's very shameful in a way that, not shameful to Nicaragua, it's a very good thing from Nicaragua. But to see no Arab state doing that instead of Nicaragua. I mean, South Africa took the first one, now Nicaragua against Germany. It's very important against Germany. Nicaragua has suffered from US coups against its own governments, bringing corrupt drug lords instead of elected governments in Nicaragua. And they actually took a case against the US when the US was still recognized the ICJ. However, when it comes to Germany, Germany is the second largest exporter. So Germany is very important. Another thing about this case is it's sending warnings to any other country sending arms to Israel. So it's not just Germany. So it's telling world states, if you want to support them, you're risking a case being taken against you in the ICJ. And that's something very good. Now, they're obviously going to try and defend their position, right? But how far can you? What are you going to talk about, the Holocaust? What do the Palestinians have to do with the Holocaust? Why are the Palestinians paying the price for what Israel claims to be the Holocaust, as in a repercussion or an answer to the Holocaust? You went to Palestine. The Holocaust happened in Europe. Jewish people didn't have any problem in any Arab states, historically. As a matter of fact, they suffered together previously. If you look at the Andalusian history, Muslims and Jews were expelled from Andalusia, which is now Spain, and they both had refuge, especially the Jewish community, in Ottoman Empire. the Islamic Caliphate. And in terms of other Arab states, they lived peacefully for centuries. But Zionism sells you this, obviously they twist the history. There's a pseudo-history that they obviously sell, that we were persecuted with the Arab states. Although Zionist militias conducted terrorist activities in Arab states after the formation of Israel to force Jews to flee to Israel, because the Jewish numbers that came from Europe weren't enough of a demographic balance or demographic superiority. And then they started bringing the Jews of Arab states. And when they came, they started indoctrinating them and brainwashing them, telling them you're no longer Arabs, you're Jews only, change your name, and this and that. Also from Catherine, how important do you think it is for Palestine to be recognized as a UN member state? Look, there's probably some sort of importance for it diplomatically, but again, we're talking about the UN. I mean, the UN, we already have resolutions. Again, we already have resolutions for Palestinian state. And they have been implemented. Israel doesn't consider them. In Israel, the tone, they call the UN in Hebrew, right? And what they say when they talk about the UN, they say shmum, as UN, da, 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 da. And they call them anti-Semitic. It's not like they care about them. Why? Because they have impunity. From who? From the US administration, the superpower. So I'm not sure if it will reach a core solution here, because also it would lead to potentially the two-state solution. In my opinion, it will never happen, in my opinion. I mean, it's dead from the get-go. But hey, they're talking about two states. So the only solution there is, like I always say, one state, equal rights for everyone. Desasur Brewer, when is the red heifer events supposed to occur? Whenever they feel like it's relevant, because they already have red cows from a very long time ago, by the way. This information is just popping up more now because there's more talk about it. But Israel had red cows from a very long time ago. They genetically modify cows in farms in Israel. And they had many red cows. That are ready when the time is right. I'm not sure they would want to instigate something now in Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, Ben Gvir tried to impose stricter measures in Jerusalem and he was set aside. They still committed atrocities and they attacked people praying and stuff, but not to the level that Ben Gvir wanted. Let's see. Joseph Daniel, thank you so much for your super. And Marvin Vergas. Where are we? Hester who? Do you know anything about Hamas saying they can't locate 40 hostages for the negotiations? Look, I wouldn't be surprised. And again, many people in Israel who criticized the government's actions in Gaza were criticizing them for their conduct when it comes to the bombing, the indiscriminate bombing, telling them Israelis could be there. And Israelis were there. Not all of them were in tunnels. And many of them were killed by Israeli strikes when they were in buildings. So let's say Hamas had more or other resistance groups, because it's not just Hamas. They had some of these people in residential places. And there were instances. And Israel bombed them. And Israel doesn't allow aid, doesn't allow the civil services to even take bodies. Bodies are decomposing in Gaza. That's the same to Israelis then. And that's why we've said from day one, Israel doesn't care about its own citizens. No country that cares about its own citizens does such a thing. So let's say, for example, I'm Israel and I am a supremacist. And I only care about my people, and I see the Palestinians as subhuman, like they stated. The first thing that I would want to do is get my people back. I'm not going to go and bomb indiscriminately. I'm going to enter into immediate negotiations. Hamas, what do you want? I want my people from the prisons. I'll give them to you. Take them. You can't have anything else, though. That's a big expense from our side. We're releasing people with blood on their hands. We don't like them. We'd rather kill them if we could in the prison. But usually it's not like they do torture them to death, but there is no death penalty. The only death penalty is when you're sitting in your bed and Israel wants to target you outside of prison. So there is a death penalty, but not inside of prison. There's an argument there, though. Like I said, they torture someone to death. However, you get the point. I'll get them, I'll pay a heavy price, and then I'll go after Hamas. Because I got my people that I care for. Clearly, they don't care about their people. And they're on a mission to commit genocide. They don't care about Israeli life. They don't care about their own soldiers' life. I gave you many examples, not one example, many, many, many examples, including what we spoke about when they were bombing them as they were fleeing, another video that you're going to see when you finish this live stream, and with the 3 Israeli soldiers that were held by Hamas in Jabalia, if I'm not mistaken, and Israel had information somehow that they were present in one of the tunnels with a man called Al-Ghandour, who was a leader in Al-Qassam brigades. And they targeted that tunnel with a gas bomb, knowing that there were 3 Israeli soldiers held by Hamas. There was an investigation, and the mother of one of them knew. And she went to the funeral, and in the funeral, she wrote on his grave, "They betrayed you." And she started posting on Facebook. We spoke about her at the time. And clearly, she also stated that Gadi Eisenkot, the war cabinet member, he stated that if we find that there are Israelis held with someone who we want to target, we're gonna have to make heartbreaking decisions. What does heartbreaking decisions mean? Kill them. The soldier that I had on my channel here, that I had a podcast with, he told you. We all knew. But there's a Hannibal directive. Kate, will Iran proxy attack Dimona if Israel bomb nuclear Iran? Look, to be honest with you, I'm not sure if Dimona is just a cover-up. I'm not sure if they do obviously have nuclear weapons, that the nuclear weapons will be there. Dimona was already targeted by the Palestinian resistance, by other resistance groups. If it could be one of the targets, and they will obviously target very sensitive places. I mean, the Palestinian resistance and the Lebanese resistance, they already have maps of very strategic places. Israel sent warnings to its population: prepare for a lack of electricity, lack of food, lack of this, lack of that for a prolonged period, have canned food, have tinned food, have medical supplies. That's from 3 months back. Some government departments as well, let alone Iran, with their ballistic missiles. Marvin Vergus, what happened to the Maronite Christians in Lebanon? Still influential, any power? Remember Bashir Ijmal? Yes, I do. So when it comes to, unfortunately in Lebanon, there's still a sectarian political arrangement. President is Shia Muslim, president is Christian, Prime Minister Sunni Muslim, leader of the parliament Shia Muslim, and it's like a sectarian divide, right? Called it a Ta'if agreement. Vile political system, ugly. Imagine telling only this person of that sect can take that position. What an ugly system. Anyway, they have it there. However, what people need to understand is you have Christians from different sects, Muslim from different sects on both sides of the spectrum. So you'll see Christians with Hezbollah, Christians against Hezbollah. You'll see Muslims with Hezbollah, Muslims against Hezbollah, Shia Muslims with Hezbollah, Shia Muslims against Hezbollah. People need to understand that. But the enemies, obviously, they love to, see sectarian wars and stuff. So they still obviously have their political parties. And like I said, some of them are aligned here, some of them are aligned there. That's why I constantly refuse the notion of it being like a religious war or religious conflict or a sectarian conflict. People need to be very wary of that. R, thank you for your comment, and all the rest of you. Ramplans, hello Mahmoud. Yesterday there were some videos on social media where they were attacking cars with license plates from Syria at the Lebanese airport. Is that the group you just talked about? The attack that I spoke about is apparently, this is what was the report was, again, this could be made up, be careful. Killing a senior figure in a Christian Lebanese party called the Lebanese Forces that is led by a man called Samir Ja'ja. Then you had protests against Syria, against Syrians, and then you'll obviously have these types of retaliations. So external forces are working really hard to, have civil war. One of the first attempts obviously look at after they invaded Iraq, for example, killed 1 million people. That's a massive genocide. They started the Sunni Shia war. I mean, one of the great American, not great, but one of the biggest American thinkers, I forgot his name, he said the 20th century will be the century of Sunni Shia war. Why would anyone say that? It's because they have a plan to divide the Muslim nation and make them fight each other. Typical Sun Tzu recipe. You make your enemy fight within itself. Anyone with a bit of military knowledge would know. Now, some people fall for it. Ignorant people start to play on it. To this day, sometimes. Like many people will tell you now, what Iran is doing is an act. It's one hell of an act. One hell of an act. Do you know what I mean? So people need to be very wary of all of this sectarian and religious division. That's why even when we speak about Israel, we won't speak about, obviously, God forbid, Jewish people. Have marvelous people standing up against this, speaking up bravely. And you need to bear in mind, they're having to confront some of their family members and some of their society. It's not like an easy thing to do. Ibrahim Zubair, how many IDF forces are wounded and killed in the war? Well, official stats from Israel say 30,000 are disabled. Imagine. But just like around 1,000 dead. Or it's still in the hundreds, according to them. If 30,000 are disabled, how many are injured? 50, 60,000? Okay. Urban warfare stats, 1 per 3. 1 dead per 3 injured. Destruction urban warfare stats is much higher because it's way more complicated. You have less protection, right? It's not your typical urban warfare. If 100,000, if 70,000 are injured, you talk about at least 20,000 killed. That's from the statistics, historical statistics, what they claim, when they speak about tens of thousands of disabled people and 103, how many? There was a report in Israel saying 300,000 suffering from mental problems or what have you. And a big part of them is from the army. Brain injuries and what have you. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, they won't reveal the numbers. They don't want to show the defeat. Mainstream media is working really hard not to show the level of defeat. But anyone who is monitoring the situation exactly as it is, tell you it as it is. They're facing a military humiliation. That's why they'll always spin the 7th of October. They won't tell you about the military humiliation. They won't tell you that an armed group took down one of the most supposedly advanced armies in the Middle East, a whole division that's supposedly the most sophisticated and advanced division in a matter of 4 hours, taking them down. 16 bases, sometimes with no resistance from them, kidnapping commanders and their boxers. They'll tell you what Israel did to its own citizens and blaming it on Hamas. Torotama, do you think the Haridim will rebel against the draft imposed by the Supreme Court? Could it bring down the coalition? What kind of government would arise? Look, Netanyahu is in such a tough situation. In all of his coalitions, he always relied on the Haredi vote. He has two Haredi movements in his government. One is called Yahadut HaTorah, Torah Judaism. One is called Shas. One of them is for Mizrahi, ultra-Orthodox Jews. One of them is for Ashkenazi, ultra-Orthodox Jews. The agreements he has with them is no conscription. We will further give you more options and powers when it comes to Shabbat keeping, religious division, men and women here and there, your ritual more based on coalition agreements, and obviously lots of money. Now it's like a carrot stick situation, but he knows his limits. Like they started defunding some of these called yeshivas, where people study the Torah in Israel, since the 1st of April. And they're talking about conscription. But the response from the ultra-Orthodox community was very blatant, very fierce, and very straight to the point. One of them said, one of the Mizrahi ultra-Orthodox, their chief rabbi, he said that if you try and impose that on us, conscription, we will leave Israel en masse. You have already over 3-4 million now fleeing Israel. What are you going to do without these people? By the way, they stopped releasing stats of people fleeing Israel since November. Do you know that? They don't. Because they know how many people fled Israel. They want to try and save themselves to the last second. So they're already rebelling. There's fights in religious communities, like in a place called Me'a Sha'arim, where one of the largest religious communities lives there. There were people from a movement called, in Hebrew, Achim Leneshek, or Brothers in Arms, that support the army, and also protest against the judicial reform. They went there and did a protest, and they started to have clashes between them and the religious community. Many in the Israeli forces, they hit them, they humiliate them, especially if they dare to speak up about Palestine, and many of them do, like Neturei Karta and some of these other movements. So it's a very tough situation for Israel. Aquila McCann, that's the $1 million question. Will Israel attack Rafah? Well, Netanyahu is saying it's imminent. Now Benny Gantz is saying it's happening and we're going back to Khan Yunis and Gaza and we'll go into Rafah. Netanyahu is saying we have a date. It seems like it's going to happen. To what level and at what expense? Will it be the same level of ground invasion they had all across of Gaza? Anyone that's assuming that anyone has an ounce of brain in this government, will tell you we failed all across of Gaza. How the hell are we going to win in Rafah? Just now, they withdrew a couple of days ago. Hamas has already reestablished itself everywhere above the ground in terms of civil services. And they're complaining Israel won't allow the civil services to go here and there. So Israel knows the situation. What are you going to do exactly for Rafah? If they're going to attack Rafah, it'll be like, again, another thing that they do for domestic public opinion, that we also invaded Rafah. We acted all across of Gaza. If they leave without attacking Rafah, some people will still have it on Netanyahu and this war cabinet that you didn't attack Rafah. And how can you tell us this and how can you tell us that? Although they will fail in Rafah, the only thing they will do is more genocide. They will tell their people we acted everywhere in Gaza and now it's time to leave, and we did actually dismantle all of them, and we attacked 80 to 90% of their capability, and they can't pose a threat because we now demolished their organizational or hierarchical structure. Like their definition of dismantling a brigade, their military definition is making it not function as an organization. What kind of a vague definition is that? You still have people fighting, and you clearly haven't affected even that because they're still communicating. And based on the attacks that they're committing against you, you clearly see that these people are coordinated. There's a structure, there's communication, there's intelligence, there's quality attacks against the Israeli troops in Gaza. But it would be for domestic purposes, so that no one would tell Netanyahu, oh, you didn't go into Rafah. And the days will reveal. We obviously pray it won't have too much of a negative impact on the population, because they only target the population, really. Hamas is there. Hamas is there to stay. You know, one of the people who I spoke with on the modcast, he had an interesting argument. It's like, he was like, even if they commit the genocide, God forbid, Hamas will remain because they're in the tunnels. Do you understand? So if they kill everyone on top of the ground, Hamas is under there. They have a network that Israel hasn't infiltrated. Anything they infiltrate is a booby trap, and they get exploded in them. Do you understand? Marvin Burgess, who's the largest Israeli lobby in the UK? Well, you have the UK Labour Friends of Israel, you have the Conservative Friends of Israel, and they keep themselves as a force more hidden, less blatant than the US, despite the fact that you had investigative journalists revealing them during the Corbyn era. One of them was released on Al Jazeera. Them speaking with activists, trying to take people off their positions in UK politics, talk about undermining democracy and undermining sovereignty. You're infiltrated to the T by Zionism and by Israel. And we have proof, yet they don't talk about them. Why? Because they're Zionists like them. Or because they bought and purchased by them. Or because there's an Epstein network that we don't know of that has evidence against them. And yeah, that's it. Okay. Apologies if I missed any of your comments, by the way. I tried to address all of them. Let's finish it there, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for all of your super thanks contributions. I really appreciate them. They really support my work massively. And you guys are amazing. And thank you for all the people who shared their thoughts. You have very great insights, and all of the questions. Again, sorry if I missed some of them. I really enjoy my time with you. ABCD, you missed my one question 3 times. I swear I addressed some of your questions. I swear I addressed like 2 or 3, but I'm sorry if I missed one. Send it to me. We'll hopefully address it again soon, because we have them regularly. But I remembered A, B, C, D, and I will address your other one next time. But thank you so much again, everyone. I'm here obviously daily, hopefully. And I have another video that was out. Go ahead and watch it. There will most likely be another one shortly. And enjoy the rest of your evening and have a beautiful weekend ahead. And I will see you very soon. Take care. Lovely to speak with you. And see you soon in the next video. Take care.